most of what you've heard about Iran probably started in the last 50 years. A revolution, a headline, a news segment. And that's exactly the problem, because the story actually started 2,500 years earlier, with an empire so far ahead of its time that historians still argue about how it got that way. What makes Iran's history unique in the ancient world? Iran, historically known as Persia, is one of the only civilizations on Earth to maintain a continuous cultural and linguistic identity for over 2,500 years, surviving conquest by the Greeks, the Arabs, and the Mongols without ever fully losing its language, its stories, or its sense of itself. Most empires that fall disappear. Persia kept coming back. To understand how that's even possible, we have to start at the beginning, in the year 550 BCE, with a king named Cyrus. Before Cyrus the Great, the region we now call Iran was a patchwork of smaller kingdoms, the largest being the Medes. Cyrus, a Persian ruler from the region of Fars, overthrew the Median king and began stitching together what would become the largest empire the ancient world had ever seen, the Achaemenid Empire, stretching eventually from Egypt to the edges of India. But what made Cyrus remarkable wasn't just the size of what he built, it was how he ran it. In 539 BCE, after conquering Babylon, Cyrus issued a proclamation inscribed on a clay cylinder, now known as the Cyrus Cylinder, and held today in the British Museum. In it, he declared that conquered peoples could worship their own gods, keep their own customs, and in the case of the Jewish population held captive in Babylon, return home and rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. Some historians describe it as one of the earliest known declarations of religious tolerance issued by a ruling power. Persia's very first empire wasn't just built through conquest. It was held together by an idea that ruling different peoples didn't require erasing them. Cyrus's successors expanded on that idea with genuine administrative genius. The empire was divided into provinces called satrapies, each governed by a local official, but connected to the capital by a system of roads, relay stations, and mounted couriers so efficient that Herodotus himself marveled at it, writing that nothing on earth traveled faster than these Persian messengers, an observation still echoed centuries later in the mot adopted by the United States Postal Service. An empire that size, holding together dozens of languages and religions without modern communication, wasn't an accident. It was engineering. That idea would be tested almost immediately, and not everyone Persia encountered saw it that way. In 490 BCE, and again in 480 BCE, the Achaemenid Empire clashed with a loose alliance of Greek city-states, in what history remembers as the Persian Wars. You've probably heard of the battles, Marathon, Thermopylae, Salamis, mostly because Greek writers, especially the historian Herodotus, wrote the accounts that survived. From the Greek perspective, this was a heroic stand of small free cities against an overwhelming Eastern tyrant. From the Persian side, it was a costly, frustrating campaign at the far western edge of an empire that stretched across 3 continents. Here's the detail that rarely makes it into the story. Persia lost those wars, but the empire barely noticed. Greece was a tiny, expensive frontier problem for a superpower that still controlled most of the known world. The real ending came from somewhere else entirely, in 330 BCE, when a young Macedonian king named Alexander the Great finished what the Greek city-states never could. Alexander defeated the last Achaemenid emperor, Darius III, and burned the ceremonial capital of Persepolis to the ground. For a while, it looked like Persia's story might simply end there, absorbed into someone else's empire. It didn't, and this is where the pattern starts to repeat itself. Persian culture, language, and administrative systems didn't disappear under Greek rule. They got absorbed into it instead, so thoroughly that Alexander himself adopted Persian court customs and married a Persian noblewoman. Within a few centuries, a new Persian dynasty, the Sassanians, rose up in 224 CE and rebuilt a Persian empire that rivaled Rome itself as one of the 2 great superpowers of the ancient world. Persia had been conquered, absorbed, and had rebuilt itself, once again as a superpower. Then, in the 7th century, everything changed for real. Beginning in 633 CE, Arab Muslim armies swept out of the Arabian Peninsula, and by 651 CE, following the decisive Battle of Nahavand, the Sasanian Empire had fallen, and its last emperor, Yazdijerd III, was dead. Islam arrived, and it arrived permanently. Over the following centuries, the vast majority of Persia's population converted, and the region was folded into a rapidly expanding Islamic world. This is usually where a lesser civilization's story ends, culturally absorbed into whoever conquered it, its language fatting into the language of its new rulers, the way it happened across huge stretches of the ancient world. Persia refused to let that happen. Around the year 1010 CE, a poet named Ferdowsi completed a 60,000-verse epic called the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, written almost entirely in Persian rather than Arabic, deliberately preserving pre-Islamic Persian history, mythology, and language at a moment when Persian identity could easily have dissolved into the broader Arab-Islamic world around it. Ferdowsi didn't just write a poem. He built a container sturdy enough to carry an entire civilization's memory forward, in its own language, through centuries of foreign rule. Persian survived as a major language of science, poetry, and administration across the Islamic world, not despite the conquest, but running alongside it. That resilience faced its harshest test yet in 1219, when Mongol armies under Genghis Khan swept into Persian territory, and later, in 1258, his grandson Hulagu Khan sacked Baghdad itself, the seat of the Islamic Caliphate. The devastation across Persia was staggering. Entire cities like Nishapur and Merv were destroyed, their populations killed, their libraries and irrigation systems ruined for generations. By any reasonable measure, this should have been the end. Instead, within decades, the Mongol rulers who settled in Persia converted to Islam themselves, adopted Persian administrative practices, and patronized Persian art, poetry, and architecture, the same absorption pattern that had happened with Alexander's Greeks 1,500 years earlier, repeating itself almost exactly. Then, in 1501, Persia did something that permanently separated its identity from its neighbors, and this decision still shapes the region today. A young ruler named Shah Ismail I founded the Safavid dynasty and declared Twelver Shia Islam the official state religion of Persia. In a region overwhelmingly dominated by Sunni Islam. This wasn't a small theological footnote. It drew a hard identity line between Persia and its Ottoman and Arab neighbors that persists to this very day, one of the clearest examples in history of a religious choice becoming a permanent marker of national identity. Persia carried that identity forward for the next 4 centuries, through the Safavids, then the Qajar dynasty, until in 1925, a military officer named Reza Khan seized power and founded the Pahlavi dynasty, formally renaming the country Iran in 1935, a name meaning land of the Aryans, emphasizing the country's pre-Islamic Persian roots, even while it remained a majority Shia Muslim nation. His son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, would rule for decades, pushing rapid westernization and modernization, until growing unrest, economic strain, and religious opposition led to his exile on January 16, 1979. 2 weeks later, on February 1, 1979, an exiled religious leader named Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned to Iran, and within months, the country was declared an Islamic Republic, a political and religious identity that continues to define Iran on the world stage today. So here's the through-line running underneath 2,500 years of conquest, collapse, and reinvention. Every single time Persia lost, to the Greeks, to the Arabs, to the Mongols who swept through with more destruction than almost any invasion in recorded history, it didn't disappear the way most conquered civilizations eventually do. It absorbed the conqueror, preserved its language against enormous pressure, and rebuilt its identity around a new idea each time: tolerance under Cyrus, poetry under Ferdowsi, faith under the Safavids, revolution under Khomeini. Rome fell once and stayed fallen. Persia has now been declared finished by history at least 4 separate times, and 4 separate times it simply wasn't. The headlines you've seen about Iran are a single frame pulled from a 2,500-year film, one still being written by roughly 90 million people who speak a language directly descended from the ones spoken in Cyrus's court. And the next time you hear that country's name, you'll know you're not just hearing about a modern nation. You're hearing the latest chapter of one of the only civilizations in human history that has never fully stopped telling its own story, in its own words, no matter who tried to write the ending for them.